MAGA Republicans in Oklahoma are mandating that the Bible be taught in public schools, so now they need 55,000 copies, but each Bible reportedly has to meet some oddly specific criteria. These Bibles must be the King James Version, contain the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance, Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights, and be bound in leather or leather-like material. Not many meet those standards, but what do you know, Donald Trump's $60 God Bless the USA Bible checks all the boxes. And yes, the Oklahoma superintendent who imposed this mandate is a staunch Trump supporter. Even though it contains the Bill of Rights, Trump's Bible has received criticism since it reportedly omits constitutional amendments 11 through 27, which cover things like the abolition of slavery and granting women and black people the right to vote. As of October 7th, Oklahoma hasn't publicly commented on who their final choice of Bible distributor will be, so it's possible they may still go in a different direction from the Trump Bible, especially after outrage over this story has become widespread on social media in the past few days. However, one thing is clear. A state that has imposed strict limitations on certain educational content, enacting sweeping book bans, restricting discussions on race, and limiting teachings about LGBTQ+ rights, is now mandating that a religious text be taught in public schools in what many believe is an unconstitutional violation of the separation of church and state. So is this really about doing the right thing for children's education, or is it about the MAGA agenda?
This is a post from the official White House IG page, and Trump has announced his plans for a White House Faith Council. So the separation of church and state is a core American principle, and it exists to protect both the government from religious influence and religious groups from government control. So it goes both ways. And the First Amendment guarantees this freedom of religion, meaning that the government can't endorse or enforce religious beliefs to the public. Historically, authoritarian leaders always try to blur these lines. And that's because when religion and government merge, the leaders can then justify oppressive policies because they are God's will. And that's exactly what Trump is doing. Trump has spent years using a Christian nationalist rhetoric to position himself as a chosen leader. They've literally worshipped golden statues of this person. His messaging really taps into that religious extremism to then justify his extremist, radical policies, gain loyalty, and then, of course, silence opposition. All of this aligns directly with Project 2025, or that now America First plan. This plan includes stacking courts with religious fundamentalists, restricting LGBTQAI+ and reproductive rights, and funneling federal power into Christian nationalist policies, which we have already been seeing. Moral of the story is, when a government starts enforcing religious doctrine, history tells us that it definitely is not going to stop there.
The separation of church and state. It's one of the founding principles of this country. But now the Trump administration wants to blur the line and allow religious organizations like churches to get involved more heavily in politics with direct endorsements and keep their tax-exempt status. So here's what's going on. In August of last year, a group of churches, along with the National Religious Broadcasters and a religious nonprofit, filed a lawsuit in federal court in the Eastern District of Texas against the IRS. In that lawsuit, the plaintiffs say the 1954 amendment to the federal tax code, called the Johnson Amendment, is completely unfair because it prohibits religious organizations specifically from supporting or opposing candidates for public office, including making statements about those candidates. The plaintiffs say that discriminates against religious organizations and violates their First Amendment rights. They say they should be able to keep their tax-exempt status and be able to support or oppose publicly whichever candidate they want to their flock through any means they choose. Under the Biden administration, in December of last year, the Department of Justice, on behalf of the IRS, responded to this lawsuit saying this group is grasping at straws. They are asking for a solution to a problem that does not exist because no one from the government has stopped them from any of their activities. And on top of that, hello, church and state, there is no reason why American taxpayers should be subsidizing what amounts to lobbying or political activity by giving these churches tax-exempt status. Basically said, they can't have it both ways. The Biden DOJ asked the judge to dismiss the case. Now, real quick, before I go any further, you need to understand how the law works. In 1954, the Johnson Amendment was passed by Congress and added to the tax code. It says all 501c3 organizations like charities and churches are absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office. Contributions to political campaign funds or public statements of position, verbal or written, made on behalf of the organization in favor of or in opposition to any candidate for public office clearly violates the prohibition against political campaign activity. Violating this prohibition may result in denial or revocation of tax-exempt status. Now, the tax code does allow these 501c3 organizations to have voter registration or get out the vote drives and certain educational activities related to elections as long as they are done in a nonpartisan way. This amendment at the time was not controversial, and the organizations believed it was a small price to pay to not have to pay any taxes. It's also worth noting that over the years, the IRS has been pretty reluctant to enforce the Johnson Amendment. They have often turned a blind eye to blatant violations of it and have exempted certain political activities by church leaders outside of normal church proceedings. That's why the Biden administration said this lawsuit was a solution in search of a problem. Well, as you know, in January, the Trump administration took over, and just 2 weeks ago, the Trump Department of Justice decided to take a different stance on this case. Instead of fighting it, they have decided to make an agreement with this religious group that is suing and reinterpret the Johnson Amendment. In the consent decree, the Trump administration says the new policy will be when churches, through their religious teachings, endorse or oppose a particular candidate, and they do it through their customary channels of communication, including from the pulpit, that will not be considered participating in or intervening in campaigns. And it's not really campaign activity anyway, it's more like a family discussion. So these churches should be able to do that and keep their tax-exempt status. Now, this is not a done deal. In order for any of this to actually go through, the Texas federal judge overseeing this case needs to go over the legality of what has been agreed to and either accept or reject the consent decree. There is no telling when the judge is going to rule on this.
Folks, America has a new crisis. Too much religious freedom. But don't worry, the Justice Department has a plan. They've created the Religious Liberty Commission. The name suggests it's about protecting all religions. In reality, it's government and Christian church shacking up again, even though that relationship never ended well. They just had a peach of a meeting, during which Trump said kids in public schools are being indoctrinated with anti-religious propaganda and promised to bring back religion in America. That's a bold claim in a country that already has more churches than Starbucks. Commission Chair and Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, said, "We are primarily a Christian nation, but this committee represents all faiths because that's what our founders intended. Except the membership list includes Protestants, Catholics, and Jews. And that's it. Sorry Muslims, sorry Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, indigenous traditions, etc. Apparently all faiths means the three faiths we already hang out with." Author Eric Metaxas declared, "You cannot have America without a robust Christian faith." Which is awkward because the Constitution literally says you can. Trump also announced new Department of Education guidance to protect prayer in public schools. Womp womp, students already have that right. But see how the tricky rascal is rebranding religious freedom as an attack on Christianity? Folks, liberty only works when it applies equally. Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, atheist, anyone. Don't get it twisted. The cabal isn't protecting prayer. They're trying to run the pulpit, and it's entirely feasible that they're going to rebrand the Christian God as a Bible-hawking orange dude.
Hello you all, it's Anthony. Welcome back to my channel. And as I usually say, I love you all. And if I had a present, I would give you each a present. But now, forgive me, I have none. So the Trump administration is again on the radar. They want to join, merge, unite the church and the state. They want to marry the church and the state. Which is very bad because even our founding fathers saw this as a problem. And they decided, no, we have to divide the church and the state, each to exist separately. Because you saw the other day, Texas government, now this one, I'll tell you at the end of the video what Texas did. I tell you at the end of the video.
The separation of church and state is completely out the window with this Trump administration. While we are all distracted by the blatant corruption daily, Trump and his cronies are advancing a Christian nationalist agenda under the guise of protection and prioritizing evangelical Christianity over pluralism with the use of the Religious Liberty Commission Trump created with an executive order on May 1st. This commission is a federal advisory board officially tasked with reviewing the history of religious freedom in the United States, identifying threats to it, and then recommending policies to the White House. The unofficial task it seems to be operating under is to promote Christianity in America. The Commission's meetings and announcements emphasize that America is a Christian nation under siege. Trump has even said himself, "We are bringing religion back to our country." The problem is, he's only talking about one religion. They have said that LGBTQ plus protections are an attack on faith while downplaying actual threats like mandates for Bible instruction or the 10 Commandments posted in public school classrooms. The commission itself is predominantly made up of members with Christian faith. There is no clear representation for Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, or other minority faiths. All of this is a violation of the separation of church and state that is clearly outlined in the First Amendment of our Constitution. The Establishment Clause prohibits the government from establishing or favoring any religion. This ensures that government actions don't coerce religious participation, promote one faith over others, or entangle religious institutions with state power. It protects religious freedoms for believers and non-believers alike, keeping public institutions neutral. Trump has politicized faith in ways we have never experienced before and is using his made-up federal commission to do so. If this commission is left unchecked behind the scenes, it could leave us with religious majorities dictating our public norms. It is the weaponization of faith against civil rights. The only way for religious liberty to thrive in this country is to be separated from the state. Let me know if you guys agree. Comment what you think about this. Like, share, spread the word, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you back here for the 411.
Trump was appointed by God to prepare the world for Jesus' return. He definitely will get into heaven, but atheists will not be allowed in. Sorry, not sorry. Is he also going to take you on a magic comet ride to your own planet after you drink the magical juice? This is yet another example of when I say, not all religious people are stupid, but almost every stupid person I know happens to be religious. So you're trying to tell me the same God that smited entire cities for being immoral chose Donald John Trump to warm the stage for Jesus. The guy who cannot quote a single Bible verse, but says that he really loves 2 Corinthians, whatever that is. And there again, Christians don't know their own book, so it looks like we're going to need a reading from the big book of bullshit. The Bible says in many different passages that there are going to be people who test you in the times before Christ. And you don't think in any way possible that it could be Trump being one of those false prophets. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It's not surprising then if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness. I wonder what that would even look like. He doesn't even seem to understand what a book actually is. But he has sold signed copies of the Bible like he wrote the goddamn thing. The funny thing is, he probably wrote as much of this book as he did his own book, The Art of the Deal. So as a Christian, your one job was to keep an eye out for people like Trump and turn against them because you saw them as a false prophet. But instead, you chomped down on him hook, line, and sinker. In fact, I think a lot of you prefer Trump over Jesus. So if your version of heaven has Trump in it, I don't want to go there. Not at all. But y'all have fun up there listening to country music and the YMCA while Trump does his little dance. I will gladly accept hell over spending an eternity with Christians. Tell your God I said hi and I am not coming to the Trump rally in the sky. Sorry, not sorry.
To those in the gallery, please be seated. Thank you for standing. For those of you who didn't stand, next time you come to the gallery, you stand for the invocation. It's respecting the Senate. If you don't stand for the invocation, I'll have you removed. We asked you to stand. I've never seen a gallery ever have any members in my 17 years of people who refuse to stand for the invocation.
Isn't it interesting how the party of stand for the flag and kneel for the cross has turned into the party of stand for the cross and kneel to Trump? Because MAGA Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick here was accosting people for not standing during a Christian prayer in a governmental proceeding. And then about a week later earned this endorsement from Donald Trump for his willing service in their redistricting battle in Texas. There was a time where the separation of church and state mattered. It mattered so much that it was one of the first things that our forefathers wrote into the Constitution, because the imposition of a national faith structure is antithetical to a functioning democracy. That level of control and insistence on a national worldview is quite literally the opposite of a free choice of democracy. And yet, we see this continued assault by Christo-fascists because it helps them control the populace. The separation of church and state is disappearing in today's government, but it is still something worth fighting for.
Trump fundraising to get to heaven is so on the nose. Like, it reeks of con man, of indulgences, of like Martin Luther being like, what?
The president is creating an anti-Christian bias task force. Just so you guys know, it's a violation of the separation of church and state, which is real. Just because David Barton has convinced you all that Thomas Jefferson didn't really believe in the separation of church and state, that he was somehow an evangelical Christian, just know that's not true. Thomas Jefferson was a deist, and he tore out all of the supernatural things from the Bible and kept the rest of it. He called that his Bible. He was not an evangelical Christian. America's not a Christian nation. It's insane, y'all. It's insane. We've already done church and state being one. They did that in England. The British monarchy and the Church of England have already done that. The French have done it. It's not good. It's not good. But you would know that if you understood history, which is why one of the things that authoritarian right-wing politics seeks to do is rewrite history or make sure you don't have access to accurate information. And controlling information is evidence of a cult. According to cult experts across the world, you're in a cult. Please stop lying. Anyway, look at God. Won't he do it? Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. He's only doing this to signal to the right-wing Christian voting bloc that he's their guy. The truth is, he does not give a flying rat's ass about Jesus, the Bible, Christianity, or anything of that nature. He sees all of you as a voting bloc. That's it. He does not like you. He does not think about you when you're not around. He is a trash can of a person who has conned all of you. Hope that helps if you're really stupid.
Donald Trump says he wants to protect the right for prayer in school and to allow religious freedom. Well, on the surface, that sounds fine because A, you can already pray in school. That's not illegal. And B, yeah, what is religious freedom? Because the panel that is part of this religious commission is made up of Protestants, Catholics, and Jews. So what is religious freedom? Because there are no Muslims represented there. Religious freedom is exactly what it says. Freedom to practice any religion. But yet when all these laws and all this talk comes about, it talks about God and Christian values and pushing all of that to the forefront. He said this nation has always been a Christian one and relied on prayer. That's fine. The founding fathers, sure, we can go with that, but they also realized that things needed to not cross into the government. They wanted that protection. Now we're seeing things like the Ten Commandments being displayed in schools. We're seeing the superintendents in states like Oklahoma pushing to have the Bible with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all this stuff in it. This is how it continues. This is a slippery slope. Donald Trump wants to act like Christianity is under attack as public schools are pushing this indoctrination against Christianity. They're not indoctrinating children against Christianity. They're just not promoting it. That's called neutral. It doesn't have to come up because it's a public school. If you want your children to learn about God, send them to a private school. If you can't afford it, Do it at home, I guess. But this is not the job of a public school to push Christian rhetoric or any religious rhetoric. Bet your bottom dollar. This has nothing to do with religious freedom. It has to do with pushing things like Christianity to the top of the pile. If we move away from a stance of neutrality in our schools when it comes to prayer and religion, then we're going to start moving towards indoctrinating for real. But this time, indoctrinating with religious Christian values, and that's exactly what this administration wants.
Hello everyone, thank you for watching this video to the end. Thank you for being loyal to this channel. You mean a lot to me. Let's talk about what Texas did. What Texas did was ban the implementation of Sharia law in Texas as a state. And now they want to take this same law to the House at Washington. Separation of Sharia law and the United States law. That's what they want to do. And why do they want to do that? Because since medieval ages, religion was considered as a cult, right? Whenever a leader tilted towards religion, he became ruthless. Now, we begin to forget the rule of law, the constitution, when we turn to religion. Let's look at Islam. There are these countries which are being ruled by Sharia law, right? And when we go to the ancient biblical times, there were Mosaic laws, which were very bad Mosaic laws, right? So, does the Trump administration want to apply Mosaic laws to our country? Do they want to use the Bible as a reference for what is good and bad in our country? Whereas there is constitution, there are laws written by both houses. What is the precedent that they are setting? Our country is a secular state. You can worship whatever you want to worship. You can say whatever you want to say, because there is a constitution and there is laws which protect you as an American citizen. Regardless of the religion, regardless of the skin color, regardless of the nationality, as long as you are an American, where you came from, doesn't matter. But now, our countries tilt towards Christianity, as in our government identifying a religion as a national religion is very bad. It's a bad precedent being set for our country, right? And this though is in the Project 2025 plan. This is the Project 2025 plan. Donald Trump wants to become the Ayatollah. The same Iran regime that we are fighting against, Trump wants to copy their method of leadership. That's what he wants to do. It's either he wants America to be a one-party state under one religion, or he wants America to have a religious leader, a supremo. In Iran, even though Ayatollah is the supreme leader, there is a president, there is a parliament, but the final decision comes from him. That's what Trump wants for our country. He wants an order whereby power, orders, laws, interpretation of laws, they all come from one person. That's the whole plan of Project 2025. If they don't come from one man, they come from one committee, a polite bureau. Trump wants to copy a dictatorship style. If you pay attention, don't look about these religious shenanigans they are praying at the White House. Don't look at that. That is just the face. That's the face. The whole plan is to have our country as a religious state with one supreme leader. Fact.